Greetings and welcomes to episode 3 of XEP's Creator Talk, exclusive to tier 2 and 3 patrons of the Xbox Expansion Pass. Today, I am joined by Lord Cognito, all the way from the realm of the Iron Lords and one of the coolest dudes on the internet. Kid you not, guys. He brings a smile to my face every time. Our topic today is the now common question of Xbox and VR. Is that a realm they should enter? Lord Cog, how are you, sir?
The Insipid one. It has been way too long. Have a creative talk, man. I'm a big fan of yours for a long time, since the Iron Lords days at ILP. Have you in, so it's good to be here. Thank you for the invite. I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. I'm busy as usual, always doing 1,000 things,
Mhm.
whether it be with VR, ILP, LogNet, Defining Duke, all that good stuff. But it is fun to be a guest and talk games and see what's going on in the industry. And we got VR to talk about and all this other good stuff with Xbox. So let's
We
get
Yeah, man, no, we do. I'm so excited you're here. You're the right person for this topic, I think. We had Fame on last episode. If anybody missed that, Fame 2K,
yeah.
David Whitaker, awesome dude.
Salute.
Uh, we talked about bringing back some of the old Activision IP.
Ooh.
I'd never heard of Hexen. He was like, Hexen, got to bring
Oh,
it back. And I was like, well,
yes.
okay. So I
Yes.
was looking
Okay,
into that.
okay. We need my request, formal request is for High Moon Studios to get back doing Transformers games. I need the original, the Fall Cybertron, War Cybertron. I need those back. At least at minimum the licensing if you're not going to do a new one.
Mhm. And dude, I'm right with you. That multiplayer in I think it was the first one, Fall of Cybertron.
So
Dude, that game, that game was dope.
so good.
That game
Mhm.
pulled me off COD in COD's prime, and I was like,
Woo!
"Oh, okay." That was
Yeah,
fun.
man. Create your own transformer, the aerial
Mhm.
stuff, the glance stuff. Oh, it was so good. So good.
It was good stuff. I dig it. I dig it. That's
Mhm.
cool. See, now you got me in that realm.
Yeah.
So let me pitch some stuff to you here
Let's go. Let's
because
go.
our topic is Xbox and VR, and that is a difficult, somewhat niche area for gamers, the VR in general. You got Meta in there, you got PlayStation VR 2 that just came out. And at the time of recording, we're about a week or so removed from reports that PSVR 2 is off to a slow start. Came out February 2022. And it looks like it's going to miss its. Sony is going to miss their growth margin. They moved about 270,000 units by the end of March, and they wanted it to be more. What company wouldn't, right? But they were aiming to ship 2 million by the end of the quarter. So that's a pretty big shortfall there. But from what I hear, not having used it personally, PSVR 2 is great tech, and the games in there are awesome. Is that you hearing similar things to that?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I'm an adopter.
Mhm.
As even though I'm with Meta, I'm allowed to look at the competition and honestly look to be honest, to be fully transparent. Meta welcomes them into space because it kind of grows VR and gets kind of more attention to it. But I do have a PSVR 2. It's fantastic tech. The resolution, the things that they've added from a fidelity standpoint look really spectacular. And yeah, to your point, if we're going to get into the what has happened so far, yeah, it's a bit of a disappointment for them based on their projections, what they had initially for it. But as far as the tech itself, one of the things that excited me was like a Horizon, call on the mountain. Because for me, I always tell people the thing that Sony does well is that third person, that hashtag just one, that third person over the shoulder cinematic high fidelity experience that has a strong narrative. And seeing Horizon in that space, and then even though you're a separate character, meeting an alloy and
Mhm.
kind of seeing the major IP, I could see the integration and the production value. So it was really well done, and a lot of other games that have been cross platform, whether it be Demio, which I'm a huge fan of, as
Mhm.
many of you might already know. It's kind of like a 4-player dungeon crawler kind of D&D kind of thing, and
Mhm.
turn based. And then there's a game called Zenith: The Last City that I'm a huge fan. Kind of like a JRPG mixed with Fantasy Star Online vibes. And they
Mhm.
also have a cross play version between the Quest and the PSVR 2, and the PSVR 2 versions are spectacular. So
Mhm.
it is disappointing to see the slow start for them. I'm very curious to see how they pivot as far as price and stuff like that. But yeah, my main concern is just that as a person who's always bought a lot of Sony peripherals like the Vita, the PSP, like
Vita.
oh,
Yes.
huge. Bro, I still got my Vita right here, man.
Man,
Don't play with me. Don't play with me, man. I
I
got.
loved PSP.
Woo!
Well, see, I had the white one. I
Oh,
had
yeah,
that
the white.
pearl
Yeah.
white one, and that was my jam. I played that Vita on my first date with my wife.
Woo!
And we used to meet up in cities, and, like, I knew she was the one, but she was like, "You can play your game?" I was like, "Yeah, Imma play it," and
Oh, keeper,
yeah,
keeper,
right
keeper.
there. What was I playing? Oh my gosh,
Tell me
Freedom
truth.
Wars, Freedom Wars. I was playing that.
Mm.
I loved that game, man. Yeah.
So good, brother. So yeah, my last point in reference to them was just that my fear is just that I hope either they a price cut or maybe some type of packaging in game wise because there's a couple of things with it that I think is at its disadvantage. The
Mhm,
fact that it is you do need a PlayStation as a requirement. It is tethered to the device as opposed to being wireless, and then the other thing is VR is really big with the PC community. So like for example with the Quest, I can connect it AirLink, and then I can play Half-Life Alex either wireless or wired, right? So
mhm.
open and access. The PC community is very creative. So I'm curious to see if they pivot after the slow start.
Do you think you mentioned price cut. Do you think that's the barrier? That's the problem? That's why the units aren't moving? Because they did have that Horizon title out there. There are VR modes for some games, more on the way. But do you think it's the price problem or the tether issue? Like, what do
Yeah.
you think is the stopping point?
To be brutally honest, I think price wise, I know it sounds crazy with if you look at the whole package, but
Mhm,
I think they're in the right pocket price wise. The problem is you have the economy is what it is.
mhm,
Then the main thing that I think the issue is that you can't operate the unit independently
mhm,
of the PlayStation. You need a PS5 for it to function, right? Whereas with a Quest, I could work independently without it. I don't need it to be tethered to anything. Tethering to a PC is optional, right?
mhm,
So when you're marrying it to a device, being the PlayStation 5, and yes, the supply chain issues are improved. We know PS5s are available now. They're doing phenomenally. They just had one of
mhm,
the record months in February. It was just outstanding to see.
mhm,
But that's a big requirement because if you have someone that doesn't have a PS5 but's interested, now there's that other barrier of entry you have to kind of go through. And that I don't know if they're willing to do that, but that's something that they have to think about. And yeah, I don't know how they get past that part because that part is tied to their ecosystem. Because the advantages of being, in their defense, the advantages of being tethered is the highest fidelity.
mhm.
Like graphically and all the function that yes, but then you lose that convenience aspect.
Sony's known for having extremely impressive AAA IP. And I mean, bar none, they do some of the best exclusives in the business. Chef's Kiss, God of War, Spider Man, Ghost of Tsushima. They really have a great catalog of first party IP. I wonder though if maybe because a lot of that IP is third person based, maybe it's not right for VR or doesn't immediately scream VR. And this is an idea. I don't know that I'm fully thought out on it, but when I think about because our topic is Xbox's version, like should they, would they
Mhm.
go into that realm? Should they partner to get in that realm? Halo makes good sense. You have a visor, you have a VR. But does it? Like, is a first person shooter is the tech ready for a good, high, fast paced first person shooter? Because the helmet makes sense, right? Like the first person perspective makes sense. Do we want to be grapple hooking around? I don't know if we're ready for that.
Yeah.
So, do you think that there's a software element to this? Like they're missing that one because I've only heard anecdotally, mind you, that Half Life Alex is the one that truly sets the VR stage. Like you got to
Yes.
play it. That's the one. It can't ever make it anywhere else. What do you
Yeah,
think?
it's a good question. It's a good question. I think that the tech is there, the creativity is there. If anybody is going to do it, it is Sony in the sense of from a narrative standpoint. You want to connect with these characters. Now, in case in point, on PSVR 1 and now available on Quest, there's Iron Man. The Iron Man game is phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
Like you in the suit as Tony Stark. There's the Tony Stark component with the narrative and things that you do. But when you're Iron Man, you're using the repulsors to kind of keep
Mm-hmm.
yourself afloat with the hands. Like
Mm-hmm.
they've translated it exceptional, flying the whole bit, using your beams and stuff like that. So it proved to me that it can be done. I think the key and I've had this conversation with King, is that
Mm-hmm.
they need to really leverage their IPs. Now, not everything is going to translate, to your point, right? Not
Mhm.
everything is going to translate. Like, when we talked about Xbox and Halo, I remember HoloLens had something like a Halo demo, but,
Mhm.
it's one thing to be in a demo and you're in the pillar of, you're moving around. That's one
Mhm.
thing. There's another thing for real combat and moving, how do you translate that?
Mhm.
So for Sony, I think that there's still IPs that they can leverage. They're mainstay ones, right? And if they do maybe spin-offs, maybe it doesn't involve the main character like what they did with Horizon,
Mhm.
Call on the Mountain, they can pull it off. But they gotta show a commitment to it. You can't just one toe in, you kind of thing. Like
Mhm.
Resident Evil came over, it was the full experience. People saw, okay, it can be done. And I
Mhm.
think that's what it is. You have to commit to VR, otherwise it's not gonna work.
That toe half in part worries me for Sony on that front as a diehard Vita fan, as somebody who bought the PlayStation camera from the get-go on the PS4, like, I loved a lot of what they were aiming for, and I don't feel like they committed, and I've been a little worried, about PSVR 2's marketing. And I say that knowing full well that because I'm not watching TV, that's like cable TV, a lot of my ads are curated and assigned. So maybe is marketing out there, but it's not getting to me. But I don't feel like Sony's committed on that front as well. Uh, which begs the question: should they be doing that? Is that where they should be investing? To, high dollar price get into this, or is this meant for the diehards that already know?
It's a good question, man. Valid concerns, right? You've been there. We've all been there as Sony peripheral owners when they have a great idea. The concern is if it doesn't knock it out the park initially,
Hmm.
how long is the commitment, right? How
Hmm.
long do they stay invested? We're going to learn a lot, in this coming months because obviously the reports are out right now about how the sales have done. And obviously, clearly, they can't be happy with that. But how do they pivot and what's the commitment on the pivot? I don't know the answers to it. Obviously, I'm a little biased. I am pulling for them because their success ties to our success
Hmm.
in the sense that, again, if you grow the community, there's things that can be done. So it's just one of those things we're just gonna have to monitor. I don't know the answer currently right now, but we're just gonna have to see how they kind of repackage or repurpose themselves in the space.
That's a good point. And for me, I wonder if it's not PSVR 3 or the successor where it's just that much easier to put it on, just that much easier to engage or to kind of have a hybrid world where maybe I'm looking at a screen and it's augmenting stuff. Like maybe my TV's on and I'm picking up and I'm doing extra things there. Maybe that's the barrier. Like it's just too much to be cut off from the world for the masses. Not quite Ready Player One,
Absolutely, absolutely.
Uh, but
No, mhm.
our topic is Xbox, bringing that
Let's
in
get it.
there. That's a space that Microsoft has chosen not to go into, and I would argue that for several reasons, it's the right reason or the right thing to do is to not be in that space right now. Microsoft, they do a great job, I think, at creating hardware. I think they're great at creating hardware. They've missed the mark a bit on software, which is a well documented problem they've had that they're clearly working to rectify as we're on finally the year of Xbox, I'm told. Redfall, Starfield, right? We already had some good IP with Age of Empires, Hi-Fi Rush coming out. It looks like we're really starting to see the ball rolling on the software side. Is there a future for Microsoft in VR 3 years from now, 4 years from now? Is that a space you see them getting into, or do you think they'll abstain entirely?
I'm gonna surprise people as the VR guy now.
Mm-hmm.
um, I actually think they made the right decision. I
Mm-hmm.
think that personally, look, I get it. We wanted them to at least maybe see what it would look like if they did try. Obviously, we were there. I was there at E3 2015 and I met Kudo and they were debuting the HoloLens.
Oh
And
wow.
I almost got a chance to play it behind the scenes, man. I had an appointment booked and everything goes. Guess what? It's a real quick funny story.
Okay.
I had it booked. I'm like, oh, I've got to see that. Everybody's telling me about the Halo demo is amazing. They like,
Mm-hmm.
bro, when you see this in HoloLens, I'm like, yes, my appointment's tomorrow. I'm out
Mm-hmm.
there at E3. And they were like, the next day I get there, it's like, oh, wait, sorry to inform you. Kanye West that was here and he took your appointment. So we have no more appointments for the day. I'm like, Kanye took my appointment. Real talk.
2015 Kanye. That was the beginning of the end.
At the beginning of the end, that's when the dark turn happened.
That's not even 2008 Kanye.
That's what I'm
Kidding?
saying. That was back college dropout Kanye.
Mm,
Anyway, but I had to tell this story. It was hilarious. I was like, all right, I took an L to Kanye on that. But
mhm,
everyone told me it was phenomenal. But then as we saw, the tech was expensive. It was really more for commercial, for business use.
mhm,
And, we see the military utilize it. So it was not something, I will give them credit though. They were kind of pioneers, maybe not first, but early into augmented reality. Remember, like having the Minecraft and the desk and stuff like that. And
mhm,
again, these are things now where I see with Quest, with Demio, where I can put this board in my living room. I can, even though I'm on my headset, I can still see everything in this room and stuff like that. So the concepts they had, Xbox had at that time, really, really great.
mhm,
But as we know with the Xbox One era, we knew what the problem was. The problem was the first party output. We
mhm,
realized they didn't have a lot of ownership of these great titles.
mhm.
The Quantum Breaks, the Rise of the Rooms, Sunset Overdrives. Yeah, they're
Mhm.
great. How come there's no sequels, right? We
Right.
learned painful lessons. And it was great in 2018 when they pivoted and said, okay, we're going to invest in first party. And I
Mhm.
think it was the right move. I think it was the right move. I think at that time, for them to spread themselves thin in VR,
Mhm.
but they didn't have the commitment to first party games would have
Right.
been a mistake. So I love what they're doing now. Like you said earlier, 2023, this looks like the year where the fruits of all that investment with
Mm.
Bethesda, everything look like it's going to come into place. Maybe a Hellblade with Ninja Theory later or
Mhm.
early next year, Obsidian with, Avowed. So it was the right call. And, I'm privy to things. I will say that what was announced as far as Microsoft's and Meta's partnership, as far as bringing Game Pass over to the Quest and things of that
Mhm.
nature. I think that's the play, and I think you Microsoft's in a position they can sit back and see how
Mhm.
VR plays out, right? Who's the
Mhm.
front runner? Where does it go? You don't have to commit necessarily to your own device, and then in their model, which is Game Pass service subscription, whoever wins, let them have it.
Yes.
So I think
Mhm.
it's the right approach, and I will say I've been privy to some things, and some people are going to be excited with
Mhm.
those things that Microsoft are doing, and I think they've got they got the right strategy. So I know hardcore VR guys would love for them to have their own device, but to me they have to focus on their house first, and I think it was the right play.
I think you're right. I think for Microsoft, they had to do a lot of course correcting from 2014 when they really got it. Like 2013, they were like, "Oh, this is a bad E3. Ah, we'll recover." And then 2014, they're like, changes need to happen. And since then, we've been seeing moves on the board that project. And if you look backwards, it makes a lot of sense why this was happening at that time and whatnot. First, it became back compat, then it became Game Pass, then it became purchasing studios, right? And in there were hardware revisions. They got rid of Connect. You saw the Xbox One S, the One X, the Series X, the Series. You know what I mean? Like they were, yeah. It wasn't Aaron Greenberg, right? Yep. What up, Aaron? It's like
There.
it's like Wakanda for nope, nope. Okay, all right, all right.
Pause.
We're all here. All right. That was my favorite part of the whole thing. I was like, what are we doing here? It was like, no, he was adamant. We would all be like this. He'd be like, no, no, no. Um,
Ghost wasn't with it. I love it.
I was just like, come on, man. Um, but yeah, there were a lot of like smart steps that made sense in hindsight. You're like, okay, I see what's happening. And if I were to put on my future vision, I see Xbox partnering with every other hardware maker of VR tech and saying, let's get Game Pass on there. Let's get, you want a game, maybe we make a Halo game that plays on Meta, that plays on, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the other one.
Yeah,
PSVR 2, but
PlayStation
as
2.
well,
Yeah,
any,
High, Pico,
yeah,
there's so
Hive,
many.
thank you.
Mhm.
Anywhere there's a VR thing, yo, you can play the Halo experience. Maybe it's a one off, maybe it's small, but in a world where they're putting out Mighty Doom on mobile, they had Gears Pop a few years back, they had the Fallout game a few years back. They're wanting us to play their games in places where we don't traditionally play them. So as they acquire IP, build IP, um, if this Activision deal goes through, if you suddenly got Call of Duty and you can make a VR specific experience, there's an element to that. And so my
Mhm.
thought is they're going to leave hardware to other makers of hardware. What do you think on that?
Absolutely. No, no, you're on fire. I think that's literally what the strategy is. And I tell people that all the time. It's part. It kind of reminds me of the people who want an Xbox handheld, and I get it, like a traditional like Steam Deck type version. I said, but I
Mhm,
always tell people, hey, that's an additional SKU. And I
mhm,
said to what you're saying goes, it goes against the model of cloud and subscription services, which is
mhm,
what they're doing. If we look at what Activision Blizzard King has shown us, right, in order to get this deal approved, they are showing a lot of the litigation, a lot of the lawmakers, hey, we're willing to put it on the hardware so anybody could get access. We're not going to harm competition. We're going to create people, give people access at all these different entry points. And I think that's the play. So whoever, from a hardware standpoint, is interested and has a platform that they can put that service on, they will make a deal with. And we're starting to see that play out right before our eyes. So I
mhm.
100% agree with you.
So we're in agreement on that front, and I think 4 or 5 years from now, that's what's happening. No matter who gets acquired or what, I think that's what's gonna happen one way or another. Um, but let's play and have a little fun towards the end here. What
Mhm.
VR games within the current Microsoft IP, would you want to happen? Like, what would you wanna see? What experience do you think you want out of a first party Microsoft game in VR?
Okay, let's go right for it. Recently had Cliffy B on the legend. I gotta say Gears. I think Gears because Gears has a visceral element to it as well as the horror element that I want them to go back from the original games. I remember, dealing with the Berserker for the first time. You're like, yo, I
Oh,
can't, bro, classic scenes,
dude.
like this unkillable thing that we
Mhm.
have to get. What is it? The Pillar of
Hammer
Dawn.
of
What was it?
Dawn.
Yeah, Pillar of Dawn. And like
Hammer
that's
of
the
Dawn. Hammer of
Hammer of
Dawn.
Dawn. Correct.
Yeah.
Sorry, I
Mhm.
always butcher that. So yeah, like at the Hammer of Dawn, get that thing out of there. And then I remember, going examples of creative light sourcing where you had to avoid the krill and you go from
Mhm.
light to dark and to be safe because you were in that dark, it was over. The krill
Mhm.
is so like and maybe you could do, it doesn't have to be Marcus Phoenix, it could be maybe one of the actually, I'm a huge fan of Gabe, what I'm saying, who is in the prequel in Gears Tactics.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, to the father of Kate and stuff.
Gabe
So like,
Diaz. Is it Diaz?
yeah,
Yeah.
Diaz, man. Like Gears Tactics did an amazing story in the turn-based genre. You
Mhm.
can do spin-offs and expand the Gears universe, so that's my first choice. There's so many IPs, bro. I mean, I can even think about Microsoft Flight Simulator is kind of amazing.
Yeah.
That can translate well to VR and utilize the tech there. Obviously, we know the elephant in the room is Halo.
Mhm.
We know. So, again, how do they implement it? They've already had a foundation, like I told you with the Hololens thing. Maybe use a little bit of augmented reality there. There are a lot of things they can do with their IPs, but my heart is Gears because I think Gears translates so well, man. Especially after playing Resident Evil in VR. In my mind, I'm like, I could totally see it. So if they were ever to dip their toe in, you
Mhm.
know what I mean, or whatever, those are the ones I would want to see.
So that surprises me, but in a great way, because Gears is what got me into Xbox. That was the one where, I mean, I tell this story a lot, but like that's the one where in college I was selling plasma so I could save up because I wanted that Gears experience. And like you're talking about the Berserker. So I remember the first time we got underground and there was emulsion and you heard the Theron guards for the first time and you were like, "Whoa!" And they had torque bows and that tension. Like suddenly, like VR, I'm like, "Oh, that's a cool
Oh
idea."
yes. Oh yes.
And I've not played. I mean, I'm deep into Resident Evil 4. I am
Mhm.
loving that game. Uh, but I've not played any Resident Evil in VR because I don't
Oh,
own a VR platform. Like I don't even have one. The money I just got the PC, right? Like I'm saving here.
I feel you,
Um,
bro.
so it translates well, like Resident Evil translates well for VR, and that's so you think third person goes in just fine?
Yeah, it goes in. You can do it. The main thing is, long as you provide the player, for people who have motion sickness, you provide them two options. One thing that VR does well, you have traditional movement in a first person kind of thing, which is what we're used to as gamers, right?
Mhm,
But in VR, some people can't handle that. That's too much to be moving around that fast.
mhm,
And so what they do, it's almost like a pointer that tells you, okay, I'm going to move there, and then it'll teleport you there. I'll take a
Mhm.
step there, and it'll tell. So that it's a teleportation movement, and that really helps people who struggle with fast movement and stuff like that, or motion sickness in VR. But absolutely, and then to your point, when you were talking about the talk bulb, I got to give PSVR's credit because Horizon,
Mhm.
call it about what you gonna call it about, and one of the coolest things is using, the arrows. You put the motion to pull it from the back, pull out the string, and then you feel the tension, and it's amazing. I was shocked they were able to pull that off so well. So again, you just got me thinking of how these things can translate in gears sensibilities, right?
Mhm.
It's awesome. Right? Like there's so many possibilities, but again, resources, commitment. VR is something you can't have. You gotta go, and if
Mhm.
they do it, it can be a beautiful thing.
Okay, I'm digging that.
Mhm.
I'm thinking about Flight Simulator, which makes perfect sense. You get that enthusiast crowd. Flight Sim is a game that transcends gamers.
Yes.
People get into that. That's like
Mhm.
solitaire, like a step up from solitaire, but you're not quite, you know. Okay.
Mhm.
I'm sure people could go with Forza, but I think they get a similar experience with Gran Turismo. Is
Yeah.
there GTVR? Is that a
Mhm.
thing?
Yeah, oh, that's a thing. Oh,
Hmm.
that is a thing. I
Yeah.
actually only reason why I didn't pick it up, I'm like, "Come on, Sony, y'all gotta bring the price down on this. This thing is still full price. Come on, GT, come on, we've
Mm,
been out for about a year now." So, like,
yeah.
I'm just waiting for a little like, I feel morally it should be a little cheaper
Yeah. Yeah.
than what it is because I wanna experience it in VR and, what you call it? Oh, what's my guys? Hello Games. They've been updating. They were on,
No Man's Sky.
No Man's Sky. Bro, that is
Yeah.
amazing in VR.
Yeah.
Woo! Oh, yes, that proof it could be done. Again, to see that in that space, don't get me too excited because that now I'm getting ambitious when I'm thinking of Starfield. But that's a great start.
Hmm.
It shows you the exploration, jumping in the ship, doing all the things you would normally do in that base versus the VR experience. To be honest with you, it's a bit better. It's a bit better.
Hmm.
There's some things that really that it's a tangible nature to be able to be in a world, touch things, interact, pick things up. It hits different. It immerses you even further. So, oh yeah, for sure.
Do you see a world where Starfield is in VR 3 years down the line? Skyrim ended up there, didn't it?
I
Did it?
believe
Oh.
they had Bethesda's been the more I will say this, they've been the more like playful
Hmm.
and stepping into space. But I think the days of them doing it since they've been acquired, I think that's over now. I
Mm.
think pre-acquisition, they were in an exploratory phase because let's be honest, single player wasn't doing as well
Mhm.
as they were, and then Fallout 76 happened, and we know
Mhm.
about that, and they jumped into mobile space, they jumped into was it Wolfenstein trying to be co-op. They were finding their way
That's a good point.
as the industry was changing around them. And
Mhm.
to be honest, I think they were in trouble. And this is why I know I get this tag of Lord acquisition. This is why I'm not anti-acquisition because
Mhm.
at the end of the day, the reality is there is going to be some consolidation in the industry. You know what I'm saying? And as you look at Bethesda now having that financial backing of Microsoft to breathe, now you can make the games you want to make. You can make a Starfield. You don't have to chase the trends and see what's going on with Battle Royale and live serve or whatever, right?
Mhm.
So that gives them stability. And then the other point I'll say, just to parrot off that, is that what we're seeing now, I think the new phase of the industry is once these companies get the bag, then what happens is some of them splinter off, and
Mm.
now they make their own studios, and the cycle continues. So I think there was a lot of fear mongering about
Mhm.
consolidation, but I think that it's just the nature of where the business is going, the industry is going right now. So yeah, to your question, I think that Bethesda probably will not at this point because of them being really comfortable and stable in the Microsoft Xbox Game Studio ecosystem.
Gotcha. So now the final question here is I'm thinking back to PlayStation's efforts in VR. They're on their second iteration. They've had Marvel games. They've had Star Wars games because they had Iron Man. They had the Battlefront
Mhm.
X-wing mission, which by the way, still jealous. I've never played that. I've never played VR, which I'm bummed about.
But we gotta
Um,
change this. We gotta
yeah,
change this. Yeah, we gotta talk
but
about that after the show.
there's some high value, like high level IP that
Mhm.
haven't moved the units the way that Sony or uh, anyone else might have wanted it to. is there an IP in Xbox's pantheon that would move units that get it past that, let's say, 500,000 mark, right? Is it Halo? Is it Flight Sim? Is it Forza? Is it a Fallout where you're aiming at something? Like, do they have an IP, or is it a matter of, no, you got to be all in, lots of experiences, lots of options?
It's a good question. I think it's there's a part of me that feels the killer app is important because there's a like, I look at Half Life, Alex, and I implore anybody that if they've played it, you walk away with a sense of, oh, okay, this is where it could go.
Hmm.
This is something that is transformative. I'm seeing something right now. There's a game called Bone Lab, and even though graphically it's not, oh my god, but the creativity that you could do in the space and a sandbox and a shooter is pretty amazing. To Xbox, I think it's twofold. It would be one, yes, you want to leverage existing IPs, but also I wouldn't mind a brand new experience. I always champion to push themselves beyond just the Halo Gears, Forza kind of thing, and they're getting there with the
Hmm.
with the studio acquisitions. For some reason, I don't know why Hellblade keeps it in my mind right now. I don't know why I keep thinking Hellblade, but it's like
That
I look
real
at
tech. Whew.
I think Ninja Theory fits a mold for me that I think is really going to impress people who are on the fence about the Xbox ecosystem.
Hmm.
And like think about Hellblade 1 and how it punched above its weight, right?
Hmm.
And the graphical fidelity and then the use sonically explaining psychosis, you hearing the voice, you're hearing Senua go through. It is one of the most amazing, unique experiences. Now we're seeing that at Unreal Engine 5 demo. Oh boy.
Yeah.
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 So I look at a company like that, and they got other products like Project Mara.
Hmm.
What I like about them is they deal with mental health, but they also have this graphical background with high fidelity. They're the studio to me.
Hmm.
So I think Maddie even calls them like he gets killed for this, but he believes it. He's like, I think that's their Naughty Dog, early stages. I'm like, hey, the potential is there. I don't want to get gassed. They gotta show and prove.
Hmm.
But the potential of Naughty Dog to be there. And that would be my pick. New IP, let them be creative in this space, see what they come up with. I think that could be exciting.
Yep. I think I'd like to agree with Maddie on that one. I think the quality of Senua's Sacrifice, the first one, was there years ago. And if we're sitting on building tech, creating things, experiences, and that is one of the best reveals of a game and console I've ever seen when that dropped. When that
Yes.
dropped. So, yeah.
Absolutely, brother. All right.
Well, my dog is telling me it's time for her to be fed, which tells me we're arriving at the end of our show. You can calm it down over there.
That was
Uh,
the cue.
yeah, that was the cue, it seems. Lord Cog from the Iron Lords, the Realm. Thank you for joining me, and let people know where they should be finding your content because you're in a lot of places in the best way, man.
Yes, man. Appreciate it, man. Always a pleasure to talk with you. It's been a minute. But yeah, man. Lord Cognito, our Lord podcast. Every Sunday is the Lord's Day. Every Sunday, 1 p.m. Eastern on the Iron Lords podcast YouTube channel. You can catch me there. You can also catch me on Defining Duke with Mr. Matty Plays. And that's on Last Stand Media. You can check us out there. Also, I do a Destiny podcast that's still going. I still got love for Destiny. Even though Lightfall is what Lightfall is, but we can go
Mm-hmm.
move on. Shout out to my man Ebontis. That's on the Ebontis channel. I do that with him and Ty Guy Travis from IGN. We do that. And then check out on the website, man. If we got some great writers, man, at lordsofgaming.net. And we just finished coming back from PAX East doing some fantastic coverage on the independent game scene, things of that nature. And yeah, man, that's what I do, amongst other things.
Mm-hmm.
But it's always good, man. It's good to talk. I miss this because I don't get a chance to do it anymore. So I'm like, it felt good to just kind of sit back, let Ghost do the hosting. I just come and talk and run my
Mm-hmm.
mouth. Love it.
Well, I'm grateful for having you and patrons. You guys are the elite supporters of XEP, so I thank you for being here. And I want you to know, before XEP even started, I met King David and the Iron Lords in line to play Battletoads at E3 2019.
Yes.
They gave me a business card, and from then they have been supporters of me since me, like Luke Lohr, Insipid Ghost, from day one. The moment they met me, it was kindness, it was support. I've had the chance to be on their show a few times. So know that XCP is here quite literally because of Iron Lords.
Oh,
So
much love, bro.
that's awesome.
Love. And last thing I forgot, we're coming up on 300 episodes. So we're coming up on 300
Woo.
episodes. So Ghost, be on the lookout. You might get a 5-10 minute request to pop in.
I'll be
You know what I
there.
mean? 'Cause, we got to celebrate it with all the people who either, inspired us, helped us, or, we just formed these great relationships over the years. And we want to make it a celebration in the community. So ILP 300 should be not this week, but the week after the recording Sunday. But we try to do it big, and it would be right if I did send the invite to the Ghost to come through at least for a minute, drop a couple bars before he be out.
I will move mountains to be there, man.
Appreciate you,
Absolutely.
brother.
Alrighty, guys. Thank you so much for listening to Creator Talk. Check out the last week's episode with Fame 2K, and before that, Mr. Boomstick XL. Take care, everybody.
Peace.